Hey, welcome to Gold's Garage, and welcome back subscribers and new viewers. And we've been talking about this for a while. Probably a few weeks ago, Mike Kimball and I made a video about planning a budget build, and I think that the project definition was to make 375 horsepower for $2,500 US, and that was the budget. The good news is the budget is going to be less than that. It's probably going to be less than $2,000, and we'll show you how we accomplished that as we go through. We're kind of in the mid stage. Mike took the block home last week and did a complete detailed cleaning of it, and he's going to explain that. We're actually going to download a short video of the process that he used. Once again, before I forget, like and subscribe. So if you like what we're talking about, we'd appreciate if you click a like, and if you're not already a subscriber, we love subscribers, and the more we have, the more motivated we are to make good videos. So if you enjoy the content, please subscribe and you'll get notifications when we make the next video. This is the second video on our budget build. There will be 2 or 3 more. 2 weeks from tomorrow, it's going on the dyno, and we'll find out whether we made our power target or not. So, but once again, it's a budget build. What's the most important part is the budget. And so let's talk about that first. One of the things that Mike budgeted for was new pistons. And we checked the bores. The bores look pretty nice. And we got done checking it all out. The new pistons that he had bought were hypertechnic pistons. And the original pistons are actually a forged piston. This is a 300 horse 350 from 1970, and they actually had 10-to-1 compression. These are basically a TRW seal power piston, and they're a forged piston. So when we check the bores, it's set up for 3 to 4 thou of piston clearance, and that's too much for a hypertechnic piston. So we made a decision to stick with the forged pistons because there's nothing wrong with them, and with the rods as well. And yesterday I made a video about fasteners, and I mentioned the methodology of connecting rod bolts with a micrometer with 2 little points on it, special micrometer, and you need a little dimple in the bolts to do that. Well, these are aftermarket bolts that were on this engine when we bought it, and they have that. So we could use that method to measure the stretch on the bolt when we do it. So that's the first thing, and that's one of the reasons the budget's going to be a lot better, because we're going to use the original pistons, and because they're forged pistons, the clearances in this block are perfect for a forged piston. Would not be perfect for a hypertechnic piston. Should be pretty tight, 1 to 2 thou the most probably, and this is 3 to 4 thou, so it's just nice for a forged piston, and it's going to reduce our budget quite a bit. So we're pretty sure we're going to make that target. So Mike's going to come in a minute and talk about what he did when he took the block home, but we got lots to do here yet. And I want to make one point. This is a budget build, but we're going to use the same process in terms of assembly. Take all the time in the world to get it right. We're going to measure every single bore, every piston, check every clearance. Same thing with the crankshaft, all the bearings, we'll check the clearance, and we will actually produce an Excel spreadsheet with all the sizes and clearances for every dimension that's on the engine. So, and we can even post that in a future video when we get all that done to show what our clearances are. It's a used motor, so they're not perfect, but they're definitely good enough to be used. So, a couple other things. I just got the block back yesterday. I did want to show installing the cam bearings, but just because of the timing, things got to get done. I had to get the cam bearings in. The cam that's in is just one of my test cams. Mike's cam is still over there on the windowsill in the box. We haven't taken it out of the box. It will go in before anything else goes in, but I just wanted to use this cam as a test. So cam installation, a little bit different than in the past. I have a universal cam tool. It's in my other storage right now, but a while ago I had trouble with one of my blocks getting cam bearing in, but the camshaft was tight. And we talked about that. I put a groove in this camshaft to clean them out. We did not have that problem this time. But anyway, in the process, I decided to buy this tool. I'm going to turn it around. It goes both ways. The cam bearing fits on here, and you can use this taper at the front or turn this guy around here when you're doing it so that this part fits right into the cam where the block goes, and it holds your cam bearing perfectly straight. So you really can't go too far wrong with this tool. It's a nice tool. It's only about $50 US, I think. It's an all-star product, and I bought this on Amazon. So for the other engines, I'm still going to be using my universal tool, but for small block Chevs, this is a nice tool to use. All-Star is not paying me to tell you this. I'm just telling you because it really does work nice. And putting cam bearings in is always tricky. I don't think there's anybody that does it that's never had one get marked up or damaged. It's tricky to do. And this is one way that simplifies it and makes it a lot safer. And if you're doing more than one engine, it's certainly worth it. I'm sure a machine shop will charge you more than that to install your cam bearings. So what we're talking about installing cam bearings, and once again, the bearings are already in, but I think this is valuable. We're going to put a screenshot of this, is where does the little hole go? So in a small block Chev, maybe I'll just flip this around. How it works is that the oil passage comes down from the main galley, this galley right here, through an annular ring where the cam bearings are, and then out this hole to your main bearing. So a small block Chev is not priority oiling. You've heard the term priority oiling. The standard one is not anyways, which means the oil gets to the camshaft before it gets to the crankshaft. But that's not a problem at all. And on a street engine, it is absolutely not a problem, or even a race engine, it's not a problem. There's an annular ring. So there's only one hole in the cam bearings 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's 2 holes in number 1. But where does that hole go? So this is a sketch to show that. And this is by Engine Builders Association, so I think they're pretty credible guys. And this is the process that I've been using for small block Chevs. So ideally, when the engine's upright, turned over, let's get this right, we want that cam bearing to be at about 2 o'clock. And the idea of that is the oil wedge comes in where the oil comes in and makes a wedge and lifts your cam off the bottom as the oil's going around. If you have a very strong lifters, there's a very strong valve springs pushing down through your lifters on your cam, is trying to push it into the bottom, and it's harder for the oil to get in down here. So as you can see, putting the hole down here is not a good idea. Anywhere from 280 all the way around. The ideal is at 2 o'clock. Okay, so when the cam bearings go in when the engine's upside down, so you put them in at 8 o'clock, and when you turn it around, it'll be 2 o'clock. Just to get that part straight. We'll put a snap or a screenshot of that. Hopefully that'll help you. A couple other things that I did, which is pretty standard. We tapped a 1/4-inch pipe tap for the plugs. The original plugs are just pressed-in plugs. It's not something that you absolutely have to do. The original engine came with pressed-in plugs, but it's an easy thing to do. If you have a 1/4-inch pipe tap, it's very simple. But one of the things you have to be careful, the very top one, these two, it's not a worry, but the top one, if you're not careful and you tap that in too deep, the plug will actually block the oil from getting to your, the main galley of oil is down here through that hole, and that plug will actually block the oil getting through number 1 cam journal and number 1 main bearing. So be careful of that. If you ever put in your own cam bearings, you need to make sure that you can use compressed air, you can put oil in there or whatever. You need to make sure the oil is getting through to around your cam bearing, around your cam and into your main bearings. Another thing to point out, if you're using a used crankshaft, so as this is, I've mic'd it up, it's really nice, it's almost right on. But almost every GM crankshaft, Chevrolet crankshaft, not just Chevrolet, but where the oil seal fits, I'll get that there. There's a small little ring you can see there, and that line is from the oil seal, dirt coming from the outside, and with the oil seal over a long period of time makes a little scratch. And if you see a small block Chev that has their leaking rear main seal, that's probably where it is. So if you buy a standard seal kit, the seal you get will line up with that little annular ring, and it's going to leak too. But this part number, Felpro BS 11829-1, moves the oil seal location over, I think, about 50 thou. So the seal is running on a new part of the crankshaft instead of right on that hole, or that line. So it's a lot better. It's more likely you're not going to have a leak if you do this. So back to where we're at with the engine. I've mic'd the crank. I have not checked connecting rod bearing or main bearing clearances yet. Of course, we're putting all new bearings. They're going to be King bearings in it. We have checked all the bores and the piston clearances. Like I said, they come out nice for a forged piston. They're not going to be nice if I use a high protective piston. So we're using the forged pistons. We're going to use the stock rods, and we're going to save a lot of money, and they're nice pistons anyway, so there's really nothing wrong with that. So we're going to be in good shape there. All the frost plugs are in. That's not we were actually going to show that, but I had to get things done here last night, so they're all in. We use brass frost plugs. The only advantage of brass frost plugs is they look nicer. I mean, the steel ones, they'll probably last longer too, but I'm sure that lifetime guarantee at my age is not a big point. So brass frost plugs do look nicer, and they're not much more expensive anyway. So when the block is clean, we need to make sure I have a device that goes through all the 3 journals and make sure that's blown out when Mike did the power washing. So we're sure this block's nice and clean. And that's kind of where we're at. Next step is what? Before I put anything in, I got to do all the clearances on the main bearing before I put the crankshaft in. But the camshaft goes in. This is just a test cam, and Mike's cam will be the first thing that goes in, but I don't want to put it in until I'm ready to assemble everything else. It's going to get coated with camshaft break-in lube, and eventually that stuff drips off. So the longer we can leave that to do, and when we put the lifters in, we'll do that again. Speaking of lifters, one of the things you need to do if you're going to do it yourself is this is my test lift. This is actually a solid lifter that I use for the green cams, and you need to use a solid lifter because the hydraulic one will collapse and give you a bad reading. And I paint it red to make sure I never forget and leave it in an engine, because that would be a disaster. So you need to make sure that every lifter goes in the bore and spins nice and easy. Check every single one before you do that, before you put your lifters in. And this one is really nice that way. So I have run across them where, for whatever reason, they didn't turn nice, and I had to spend time honing them and cleaning them up with a file, etc. So if a lifter can't rotate, cam's going to fail in no time. It's absolutely essential that your lifter can rotate. Okay, we're going to talk about camshaft installation. It's a critical point when you're trying to do any build, and especially when it's a budget build, because one of the ways you can avoid flat tappet camshaft failure is to use a roller tappet camshaft. It doesn't mean you're not going to have a failure, because the lifter can still fail. But roller setup in Canadian money, with all the stuff you need to do, different push rods and all that, by the time you get done, you're probably talking close to $2,000. So that's not going to work if our budget's only $2,000 right now. We have reduced the budget, as I mentioned. So we're going to use a flat tappet cam, but here's a couple things that we are going to do. So Mike sourced these lifters. These are GM lifters. I'll put the part, we'll show the part number of the box. And they have the hardened foot, and I think that's identifiable by the little line on the bottom. And we have not actually checked the hardness, but these are supposedly the best chance you're going to have with hydraulic flat tappet camshaft. We've already mentioned it's a Crower camshaft. We'll talk about that, and we'll put the specs up for it. But these are the lifters we're going to use. And then a few other things we're going to do, and this is pretty typical for my builds. Here's Mike's heads. We're going to start it up with the old valve springs. These valve springs only have 75 or 80 pounds on the seat and less than 200 pounds open. And so we're going to start the engine up with these valve springs. Once the cam's fully broken in, we're going to put in the valve springs that Mike's going to use, which are going to be closer to 280 or 290 pounds open. And it's pounds on the seat that keeps you from floating your valves. It's pounds open that wear off a little bit your camshaft, right? So they said you're ready to go. We already talked about this in the previous video, but Mike did the porting himself. We had lucky to have Austin Ward, a local, very successful drag racing guy who learned how to make amazing horsepower with super stock engines where you have to use the original steel heads. And Mike followed his formula and flow tested them. I think we're something like 235 CFM on the intake at a 1/2 inch lift. So pretty good flow for stock heads. This engine once again was the 300 horse 350 in 1970. So this would have been the double bump heads in the earlier day, but they changed the casting in 1970. They still have the smaller valves, 1 and 15/16 intake valves, 1.5 inch exhaust valves. I did CC every combustion chamber, and as you can see, they're all 64 plus or minus less than 1/2 a cc anyway. If anybody ever CC'd heads, it's really tricky to get that last, 1/2 a cc right on. But we're good enough at 64. I was a little worried that they might be from more than one valve job. They might be a little bigger, but they're good. So the calculation Mike has is still going to be right around 10-to-1 compression, and he can talk about that when he gets here. So obviously in every camshaft installation, we'll probably talk about this again, good lifters, they'll be coated with camshaft break-in lube, light springs, a clean startup. I have a test stand in my shop, which if you're watching this, you probably know already. So this engine will be starting to run, the camshaft will be broken in my shop, and then it goes on the dyno 2 weeks from tomorrow actually. So the break-in is also critical. The pre-lube is critical. Every engine gets pre-lube. We'll have oil pressure coming out the top of the head, out the push rods before we even try to start it up. So that way we are sure when we fire this motor, it's going to be ready to go. And so far, touch wood, I've never had a flat tap of camshaft failure on my test stands to date anyway, and lots of them. I love rollers, but they cost a lot of money and they don't belong in a budget build. So I think that covers the cam. Any questions about that, please put them on my channel. I do try hard to answer every single comment that I can. Once in a while I find one that I lost somewhere along the way and it's a long time since I answered it. I try to get back to them on that and try to be as helpful. We're here to help you. If you're learning how to do a budget build or do your own build, or you want to do one, then we're here to help, and we'll do anything we can to help. We've already talked about this block before. It's a 4-bolt main block, so I just got one journal in there right now. It's the original stock 4-bolt main block, and it's all cleaned up, and we're starting to put things together. So what's left? All the crankshaft dimensions, get the cam in, get the crankshaft in, and all the connecting rod dimensions. I've already checked the pistons, obviously put new rings in, check the ring end gaps, and we'll talk about more of that in detail in the next video. So next time you see this, it'll have all the pistons in it. We'll probably make one before we put the heads on it. So hope that helps. Fuel pump, I don't need one on the test stand. I use electric fuel pump, so we won't put any of that stuff in until the engine's ready to be installed in the car. New oil filter adapter. PF1218A. I used to use PF1218 filters, and I learned about PF1218A, which is a nice deeper filter. And that's my go-to filter from now on for small block Chevs. And basically I put the adapter on and put this on just to make sure nothing falls down in there. You don't want anything. The block's been clean. I want to keep it that way. Welcome back. I've got Mike in here now. He was behind the camera, and he's done a lot of the work. This is Mike's engine. He's done all the research on it, procured all the parts. Of course, we worked together on it, and he took it home. He had it home for a week, so I hope you got it good and clean anyway. So he's going to tell you about all the process that he went through to get this block clean and ready for use.
So I took it home with me to clean it up. I didn't really want to leave that job for Al. So I took it home, removed all the plugs, and I soaked it in degreaser. You can use LA's Total Awesome, works good. And I used a power washer that had a diesel burner, 4,000 PSI, washed everything out. Maybe not quite as good as a hot tank, but if you're on a budget, it works okay. Cleaned up nice, got everything out of it, washed out all the oil galleries, all the coolant passages, everything's clean. I oiled it, I honed it, two-step process, about I think 220 and then 400 for the Molly rings. Everything came out good. I think the hone looks not too bad. I was going to check it over just to make sure, but overall, it's something that you can do at home yourself. You don't need a big fancy power washer if you're willing to put in the time, and it's just time and effort. You can degrease it, and you can get a wire brush, and I'm sure on Amazon you can get a set of cleaning brushes and clean everything out. And it's a messy job. Probably cost $100 or so at your machine shop to get it hot tanked. The problem is if you get that done, they're going to try to get some more. And I'm not knocking a machine shop. It's just you're going to end up spending more money there because they're going to want to hot tank it. You're going to want to mag it, probably prep the block. So to avoid any of that, we just did it ourselves.
Just while you mentioned it, I have a Moroso. Unfortunately, it's not here right now. I have a whole kit of Moroso brushes. For example, cleaning the crankshaft, there's a brush the exact right size. So too bad I can't show that. I don't have it here. That brush goes right through the oil galley, all the oil galleys in and out with brake clean, penetrating oil or whatever, then blow it out. So we're sure this crankshaft is nice and clean. And Moroso kit, if you're going to do more than one engine, it's probably worth it. There's one for washing the cylinder bores. Every aperture in the engine is covered by this Moroso kit. There's probably 10 different sizes of brushes. If you're going to clean your own engine, that's worth doing. And even if you get a block hot tank at a machine shop, it's more than $100, by the way, Mike. So I do anyway when I get it back. I still power wash it because machine shop does great, but if you want to have control over the process, you have to finish the process yourself. And I would power wash it anyway, even if it was hot tank. So. And
like Al said, we did reduce the budget quite a bit. So we decided to use the forged pistons that were in the engine. They're in good shape. I had already budgeted for new pistons with floating rods, but these ones turned out to be just fine, and the clearances are better for a forged piston anyway, so we're going to go that way. And we're probably going to do this for under $2,000 now, so it's becoming more of a budget build. Not that, I mean, you could go with the new pistons. It's not that you shouldn't, but just in this case, it worked out fine.
Okay, so I think that covers it for now. Once again, 2 weeks from tomorrow, it's on the dyno, so I got work to do, and we'll get at that as soon as we can. It's race night tonight. Trevor Culver's on the track, so that's where I'm in the rest of the day. But I'll get back to it here by Monday, and probably by a week from now, less than that, we'll have another video. May have one in between that. Then we'll have one on the test stand when we start up. So it'll be running, the camshaft will be broken in, the braking oil will be in it. We can demonstrate it running, and when it goes to the dyno, it's ready to rock and roll. We don't have to worry about anything. All the settings are done, and it's ready to use, and that should be within a week from now. So watch for future videos, and if you haven't already, another reminder, please like and subscribe. Subscribers are what makes me keep doing videos, guys and girls. So if you keep subscribing, I'll keep making videos, and hopefully videos that are helpful to you, especially if you want to get stuff done DIY. Thanks for watching Gold's Garage.